Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We try to build this thing up. The goal by the end of the Packers season is 1,000 subscribers. It is attainable. We will get there. Wanted to look at a specific matchup. Obviously, we'll have Packers-Browns final thoughts coming out on Thursday. Maybe it is Thursday when you're watching this video. If so, go check out the final thoughts for the matchup between Green Bay and Cleveland on Sunday. There are very few one-man wrecking crews defensively in the NFL. They're very few and far between. I'm talking about a single player on the defensive side of the ball who can quite literally on defense take a game over or cause complete chaos and wreak havoc. Green Bay, I don't think it's a stretch to say, pulled off somewhat of a heist, only having to give up 2 first-round picks. Kenny Clark, very good, but not having to give up more to acquire Micah Parsons, who is one of those players that fits the description of can be a one-man wrecking crew. Obviously, on Green Bay's defense, doesn't need to be a one-man wrecking crew, but Micah Parsons can certainly take over a game defensively, and there aren't many players cut from that cloth in the National Football League. On Sunday, we will see 2 of them in Parsons, and when Green Bay's on offense, looking on the other side of the ball, obviously Myles Garrett. So I wanted to zone in on that matchup, how you try going about containing Myles Garrett. And I think there's even more of an emphasis on this matchup individually because Green Bay may have a rookie second-round pick in Anthony Belton lining up face-to-face across the line of scrimmage from the all-pro Myles Garrett. Zach Tom returned to practice on Wednesday in a limited capacity. Matt LaFleur had said earlier in the week, I believe it was on Monday, that he was going to allow Aaron Banks, Zach Tom, give him the entire week before making a designation for them for Sunday's game. Typically in the past when LaFleur says that, it doesn't bode well for the player's chance to play in the game. When on Monday he says, hey, we'll give them every opportunity to get right and be out there on Sunday, typically we don't see the player out there. But Zach Tom was out there in a limited fashion. That matters because if Zach Tom is out there, obviously Anthony Belton would not be playing right tackle. I want to still zone in on the matchup regardless, really the Belton aspect of it. And it kind of sounds like a stretch, a little bit of an embellishment to suggest that an offensive line or a particular offensive lineman can significantly affect the outcome of an NFL game. Then you go and you watch the Super Bowl last February, and I know the Eagles put up a ton of points, and one of those touchdowns was a pick-6 by Cooper DeJean. And one of the main reasons Philadelphia was able to beat the hell out of Kansas City was because of the pressure their defensive front got on Patrick Mahomes all afternoon, all evening in that Super Bowl. The Philadelphia defense, the defensive front in particular, was incredible. And so there's a pretty recent example where you can look back and say, yeah, an offensive line and a defensive line significantly can determine the outcome of a game. And we all know this, but, typically when a team wins, you're looking at the quarterback, the coaching, wide receiver had a huge game, running back went wild, things of that nature. Anthony Belton, if he's out there on Sunday starting for the Packers, going up against Myles Garrett some of the afternoon, will have a large say in how this game comes to be told when the fourth quarter clock expires. And to me, there's absolutely no doubt about that. Belton had his fair share of struggles in the preseason. There was the egregious game against Indianapolis, I should say an egregious half of football, where Belton, the rookie second-round pick out of North Carolina State, was penalized 5 times in a single half of a preseason game. But then you go and you watch the second half of that game, and there was a touchdown run. I don't remember if it was Abanaconda. It might have been whoever it was. Ran through the right side on like a 7 or 8 yard touchdown scamper. And in large part, there was a hole because Anthony Belton absolutely pancaked his assignment on that play. And so you see some of the good, some of the bad, with the rookie, which has come to be expected. And he's a hybrid, left tackle at North Carolina State. You have him play right tackle last week for 51 snaps, and we'll get to his snap count total and how he looked in a moment here. But there's going to be growing pains with Anthony Belton, who played a lot of left tackle. Now you're asking him to play right tackle. Sprinkled him in at guard during training camp. He has that versatility. Myles Garrett, on the other hand, like Micah Parsons, there just aren't many guys that can take over a game on a defensive front like Myles Garrett. Folks, these are stats for 2 games so far. In 2 games played this year, Myles Garrett has 10 quarterback pressures, 6 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, and 3.5 sacks. That's in 2 weeks. Again, 2 weeks, 10 quarterback pressures, 6 TFLs, 5 quarterback hits, 3.5 sacks. So in other words, Myles Garrett is doing Myles Garrett things. Belton, on the other hand, hasn't allowed a single quarterback pressure, which when going back and watching the All-22, maybe a little bit surprising, but according to Pro Football Focus, which again is not the gospel, but Belton has not allowed a single quarterback pressure, and that comes after logging 51 snaps against Washington, and 28 of those 51 snaps came in pass protection. You know, we saw them substitute in and out Belton and Kennard on those early drives in the first half on last Thursday night against the Commanders. And then in the second half, it was the Anthony Belton show. And Belton was, you know, I thought it showed a lot of faith that Matt LaFleur had, that Adam Stenavich have in Belton. He was flagged very early on. I think it was the opening drive of the game. Jordan Love finds Jaden Reed for a touchdown. What was it, like a 30-yard touchdown, whatever it was? And it got wiped off the board because of a holding call by Anthony Belton. And then Kennard played the next drive, and then they went back to Belton. And it would have been easy to say, you know what? We've seen this movie before. He's early in his career. Don't want to ruin his confidence. He had the 5 penalties against Indianapolis and a half of football in a preseason game. Here's an early holding call that wiped out a touchdown on the opening drive of the game. Let's just run with Kennard. And instead, they went back to Belton, who, again, according to PFF, did not allow a single quarterback pressure in 28 pass blocking reps, 51 snaps total for Anthony Belton. It wasn't an entirely clean process for the rookie. Like, you go back and watch some of the reps, you watch his footwork, and it seems like he's still trying to just process like a million things at once. And once the game starts to slow down for him, whenever that happens, he'll just get better and better. At least that's the expectation. But you aren't afforded the luxury of like, hey, let's just see how things go with Anthony Belton this Sunday because it's Myles Garrett. And that's no disrespect to Washington's defensive front, which looked very good week 1 against New York. Packers offensive line without Zach Tom, without Aaron Banks last Thursday, did pretty damn well in pass pro. Ground game, it was harder to come by, but they did a good job of keeping Jordan Love clean in the pocket against the Commanders. And Anthony Belton gets some props for that. But it just would have been interesting had they been going across from a Myles Garrett, what it would have looked like if we would have saw more Kennard. And LaFleur said earlier this week, like, he was asked about Myles Garrett and how you sort of go about game planning for a player like that. And LaFleur said, and I quote, he's a game wrecker. You've got to be really intentional about what you're trying to get done, because if you have a bad matchup, forget about it. This guy can make it ugly in a hurry, so you've got to be really conscious of where he is aligning, but also what you're asking your guys to do. I would assume pretty safely, if Anthony Belton's out there at right tackle on Sunday and Myles Garrett is across from him, Green Bay is going to intentionally, and that was, you know, a word that Matt LaFleur used, you've got to be really intentional about what you're trying to get done when you're facing Myles Garrett, because he said you can't have a bad matchup. Anthony Belton might turn out to be, you know, the next coming at tackle or guard, but he is still very, very early on in his career. 2nd-round pick, tackle, guard hybrid. This would be his 2nd ever start. Obviously, Zach Tom started week 1 against Detroit. That was the game he was injured in. You're asking a lot if you're putting Anthony Belton on an island against Myles Garrett on Sunday. And so it would be intentional by Matt LaFleur in Green Bay to put Tucker Kraft over there in some instances, Luke Musgrave, Fitzpatrick, whomever. If you're in the shotgun and it's a 3rd down and maybe you have Chris Brooks in there, Chris Brooks is lined up to the right of Jordan Love, and maybe he can offer some help for Belton and then flare out, you know, as a check down on a 3rd down route. Green Bay is not dumb. They're not going to approach it in a silly manner. There will be times if Anthony Belton is starting at right tackle on Sunday against Myles Garrett where he will be one-on-one, and he'll have to try to step up, deliver, contain. Just keep Myles Garrett in front of you if you can, for as long as you can. But in those situations where it is one-on-one, that's where Matt LaFleur can try to manipulate things for the offense, and maybe it's a screen pass, or maybe it's a quick hitter on a slant, or maybe it's a handoff out of shotgun on a draw play where Myles Garrett's overeager, and then you run to that side as he comes from the outside on the defensive end spot. So there's ways to try to manipulate it, try to help Anthony Belton with the play calling when he is lined up in those one-on-one situations. But don't be surprised if, Sean Ryan is helping out on a double team of Myles Garrett with Anthony Belton. If Tucker Kraft is lined up on the far right side of the offensive line right next to Belton, they're not going to put the rookie on an island against the likes of Myles Garrett start to finish. That is asking a hell of a lot for any offensive lineman. That's asking a lot out of a 10-year vet, right? Let alone a rookie second-round pick. And so Matt LaFleur's play calling will be able to at least help maybe mitigate, help negate those explosive plays that Myles Garrett can make. I mean, I went back and watched the All-22 from Week 1. Cincinnati beat Cleveland 17-16. The Browns missed an extra point. They missed a chip shot field goal late in the fourth quarter. The Bengals escaped with the win. There was a sequence in the fourth quarter. I just want to find the time. 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Cincinnati has it 1st and 10 at its own 20-yard line after a punt sailed into the end zone. So again, Cincinnati's up 1. It's crunch time. Bengals are up 1, week 1. 9 minutes left, 1st and 10 at their own 20. Burrow comes out in shotgun on first down. Myles Garrett blows it up. Sack. And all of a sudden, Cincinnati's like, okay, it's 2nd and 16. Now we're back at our own 14-yard line. Come out in shotgun again. Myles Garrett blows it up. Sack. Literally back-to-back plays. Myles Garrett sack, Myles Garrett sack. 17-16 game. Now you're Cincinnati and you're 3rd and 21 at your own 9. You're like, well, what the hell do we do here? Some teams would, cut their losses, hand it off, take whatever you get, punt it away. Lesser of two evils, right? You don't want to stack up mistakes. 2 straight sacks by Myles Garrett. What if Burrow throws a pick now? What if there's a strip sack? A lot of things could go wrong. Zach Taylor says, head coach of the Bengals, nope, we're coming out in shotgun again, passing play. Myles Garrett, along with others, blow it up. McGuire got the sack for the Browns, but Myles Garrett was right there. Literally a 1-point game, 9 minutes left, big, important drive. Myles Garrett sack, Myles Garrett sack, Myles Garrett quarterback pressure, along with others, another sack of Joe Burrow. 3 straight plays. That is a guy who can wreck a game. That is a guy who can wreck a sequence, wreck a possession, wreck a half. He is that good. And I know it's easy to box score hunt and look at last week, and what was it, 41-17? I can look it up. The Browns and the Ravens game is what I'm referring to. The Ravens won 41-17 against the Browns last week. Very easy to look at that and say, oh my God, they ran over the Cleveland defense. It was 10-3 at halftime. And Derrick Henry, we all know how good King Henry is, finished the game with 11 carries for 23 yards and 41 points. Hell of a lot. Lamar did have 4 passing touchdowns, only had 225 passing yards. As a team, Baltimore ran it because we know Lamar can use his legs. 21 rushes for 45 yards for Baltimore. That's Myles Garrett and that defensive front. They held the Bengals, Joe Burrow when he was upright and healthy, of course. Now he's not, but he was week 1 against Cleveland. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, weapons galore on that offense. Ideas aplenty of what you can do. Cleveland held Cincinnati to 7 total yards in the second half of that game in week 1. Again, the Cleveland Browns held the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow to 7 total yards of offense in the second half in week 1. This is a good defense, but it all starts with 95, I think. It all starts with number 95, whatever the hell number Myles Garrett is. It all starts with him. And now he's aware of what's going on in Green Bay this week. He knows Zach Tom just missed week 2, and that it seems right now, as I record this on Wednesday, that it's unlikely that Zach Tom will be out there Sunday, and he can be matched up, at least for part of the game. They'll slide him around a little bit. He'll be matched up with a rookie second-round pick who would be making his second ever start. You cannot let Myles Garrett become a one-man wrecking crew. And we'll get into more of the broader scope of things as far as this Cleveland defense as a whole in the final thoughts video, which will come out Thursday. Again, depending on when you watch this, maybe the video is already out. Cleveland's number 1 in the NFL in yards allowed per game. And, no disrespect to some of the, Spencer Rattler's been all right for New Orleans, but when I think of bad teams, just bad offenses, and I like Kellen Moore, and he's innovative and has made Spencer Rattler look, competent at quarterback. But when I think about, bad offenses, units that are going to struggle this year, you think of, you think of the Saints offense, and is Bryce Young going to do anything with the Panthers, and how's Cam Ward going to look? There's teams you can bop around where it's I don't know what to expect out of those offenses. Coming into the year, everyone's like, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, yeah, they should be dynamite on offense. Last year they scored a bunch of points. Their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. You look at Baltimore, you're like Lamar Jackson's an MVP. They have Derrick Henry, who may be slowly exiting his prime, but is still one of the best running backs in football. And then you have Zay Flowers. You have the veteran Mark Andrews. DeAndre Hopkins caught a touchdown on Sunday. Point is this. Browns defense, number 1 in the NFL in yards allowed per game, 191.5 in 2 games, and they have faced Cincinnati and Baltimore. You talk about, power ranking offenses and what tiers does Buffalo fall in and Baltimore and things like that. Cincinnati, when they had Joe Burrow week 1, when Joe Burrow is healthy, one of the better offenses in football, objectively speaking. Baltimore, one of the better offenses in football. And again, I know Baltimore put up 41. I think there was a pick 6 in that game. Was there not? Were there 2? I'm just looking at drives right now. Baltimore had a 24-yard drive that resulted in a field goal. They had a 24-yard drive that resulted in a touchdown. How the hell did they get all these short fields? So the game was 10-0 out of the gates on Sunday. 8 plays, 24 yards. If you're a defense and you hold an offense to 8 plays, 24 yards, you're doing your job. For the Ravens, it was a 40-yard field goal. 2 plays, 24 yards, 15-yard touchdown. 4 plays, 5 yards, touchdown. I don't know how they got all these short fields. Unless this got to be right, though, right? First and goal to Cleveland 5. 1-yard run by Derrick Henry. Second and goal, 2-yard run by Lamar Jackson. Third down, incompletion. Fourth and goal at the 2. Touchdown pass to Delaney Walker. Yeah. I mean, you look at a 5-play touchdown or a 5-yard touchdown drive, a 24-yard touchdown drive. There's a 66-yard. They had a fumble return. Roquan Smith, 63-yard scoop score on defense. Baltimore, very good offense. A lot of short fields. A defensive touchdown. They had a 24-yard touchdown drive, a 5-yard touchdown drive, a 24-yard drive that resulted in a field goal, and a defensive touchdown. That's 24 points right there. I know 41's a lot. Cleveland's defense will say they weren't good, blah, blah, blah. They're giving up 191 yards per game. A lot of that's because of Myles Garrett. The overarching theme is Myles Garrett. Again, what is it? 10 quarterback pressures, 3.5 sacks. The dude is wrecking games in just 2 weeks, and that's what you come to expect from someone like Myles Garrett. And so Anthony Belton will have a full plate if he's out there on Sunday. Green Bay will offer him help at times. Sometimes it'll be one-on-one. LaFleur can base some of his play calling around when they plan on having Belton in those one-on-one matchups with Myles Garrett. Again, assuming he's out there and Zach Tom is not. I think there has to be some sense of comfortability. I think we're looking at this completely differently. If Zach Tom's injury happened in week 2, you remember it happened week 1 against Detroit. They went with Kennard at right tackle after the injury was suffered by Zach Tom. And then the game was a blowout, and Anthony Belton played 3 snaps against the Lions in week 1, and it was just pure garbage time snaps. 3 snaps are out there. And then week 2 was like, okay, we're going back and forth. Kennard a series, Belton a series. Second half, all Belton. Had the injury happened in week 2, and Belton gets 3 garbage time snaps, and now you're looking to week 3, and you have Cleveland, and you're like, we have a guy in Belton who's a rookie, has played 3 snaps. Are we going to start him against Myles Garrett? Like, there has to be a sense of comfortability that Green Bay can look and say, we just played him 51 snaps. We chose him over Kennard for the second half against Washington, for better or worse. And really, I don't know. We don't know what Kennard would have done if it was him out there in the second half instead of Belton, but Belton held his own in those final 2 quarters. The early blemish was that holding call wiped out a touchdown. After that, he was pretty fine. Again, it wasn't perfect watching the film. There's still like a raw element to him as a prospect trying to transition into the National Football League. But there has to be some, at least a little sense of comfortability in putting Anthony Belton at right tackle Sunday, knowing that he's going to be going up or potentially going up against Myles Garrett a lot because he just logged 51 snaps. Like, all those reps, live game action, regular season, are so valuable to have. So he has some experience under his belt. It's a really small sample size. It's not much, but to me, it's better than nothing. And so I think it, like, mentally for Anthony Belton, it helps him knowing, like, just went out there Thursday, did all right, held my own. Now it's a different beast on Sunday with Myles Garrett, and the Packers know that. LaFleur knows that. But LaFleur also mentally has to be like, we'll trust it to start the game, assuming Zach Tom is out again, and then just see how it goes. Offer him as much help as you can. I do think this is such a fascinating matchup on Sunday that typically as a viewer when we watch a game, basketball, baseball, football, whatever, the priority as a viewer, you follow the ball. You know, Jordan Love's passing it. Where's the ball going? Who is he passing to? How long of a pass it is? You're not looking around elsewhere on your TV screen. What's going on? The passes to the near sideline. What's going on the far sideline? Like, you're following the ball as a viewer. On Sunday, I'm not telling you to do this every single snap. On a few. If it's Anthony Belton matched up with Myles Garrett, and it looks like it could be a one-on-one rep. There's no tight end help over there. If they're in shotgun, maybe Brooks is on the left instead of the right. Belton's on the right. Maybe there's no double team coming from Sean Ryan. Here's all I'm telling you. On Sunday, in that matchup, just peek over a couple of times at the Anthony Belton Myles Garrett matchup. Just once in a while, peek over. And instead of following the ball, just see how that looks. Because I am telling you, it will play a major factor in deciding the outcome of this game. Green Bay's favored. I can look real quick. I believe Green Bay's favored by 6. That's a lot in the NFL, especially for a road game. A road team, I should say. But Green Bay obviously looks lights out. Green Bay, oh my gosh. Green Bay's at time of recording this, the Packers are a 7.5-point favorite. Over a touchdown favorite on the road. And again, Cleveland looked bad week 2, right? We'll talk about their offense, Joe Flacco, in the Final Thoughts video. They should have beat Cincinnati week 1. 17-16, missed a late chip shot field goal. It was not a long one. Missed an extra point. Lost by 1. That defense held Cincinnati to 7 total yards in the second half. Week 2, uglier, on the road against Baltimore. 7.5 is a lot of points to get for a road team in the NFL. Shows the respect the odds makers have for what the Packers have done. Kind of just running over Detroit and Washington. But we'll see. But I'm telling you, just peek over a couple of times on Sunday for that Belton-Garrett matchup because I think it'll tell the tale of the tape for how Green Bay's offense will either have a lot of success or have some struggles. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Always appreciative of all the support. I'm going to finish with this. I was looking at some of my analytics on my YouTube channel. It's still relatively new. It's like a year old. We're building it up. The goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the Packers season. And I was looking at some of my analytics. I believe I saw my videos from the last 3 months, the last 90 days. 86% of the views are coming from non-subscribers, which is awesome. New eyeballs, new viewers, awesome. 14% are from people who subscribe. But that 86% means just click the subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds. 2 seconds, click the subscribe button. Always appreciative of all the support. We'll see you next time.